Hi, nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Nice to meet you, Stanislav.
Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Yes, we're live, Anna.
Okay, great. So, hi everyone, and welcome. And first of all, Happy New Year. This is our first meeting in 2021, and we're looking forward to a fun and successful year together with you. As some of you may know, I'm Anna, and I will be your host today on behalf of Product People. We Product People are a German-based consultancy, and we help companies efficiently develop great products. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we act as interim product managers to fill a temporary gap in our client's organization. This could be, for instance, a company that's looking for to fill a product management role, but that usually takes a while. And if there's a urgent need, we are happy to help. Then we also help our clients obtain product profitability turnaround and growth and efficiency by offering advisory services, consulting services. And last but not least, we help our clients achieve more knowledge, gain more knowledge in the field by offering remote product management training. So if you or anyone you know are in need of such services, we are always happy to help. Please contact us. And furthermore, together with you, we conduct these weekly meetings. And today, like always, we have a guest who will talk to us about exciting subjects from the product management world. And this discussion will be followed by a Q&A session and a friendly networking event on Zoom, to which we gladly invite you all. So today we have the pleasure to talk about dual tracking Agile for product management with our guest Adriana. Adriana is a senior business analyst and an Agile delivery consultant at ThoughtWorks. Adriana, thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to learn about this topic and are very much looking forward to your presentation. Please, you have the mic.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you in this weird online digital world. So I'm going to share my slides, and I just have to say that they're nothing special, but I'm hoping that this will be beneficial to all. And if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat and or ask them in the Q&A. Thanks for the intro and Happy New Year from me as well. I hope you can see my screen right now. Let me know if you don't.
Perfectly, yes.
Great, amazing. So I will be talking to you. So first of all, I'm Adriana, yes, and I am a senior business analyst and delivery consultant at ThoughtWorks, as Anna mentioned. I've been at ThoughtWorks for 6 years, and it's a consultancy, so I get to go to various different clients in different industries. And I work across different teams in multiple roles. So I've been a business analyst or more product orientated, a delivery manager orientated. So a variety of those. Today, I'm going to talk to you about DualTrack Agile for discovery and development. And so this is what largely I'm going to be talking about. I'm not going to stop too much on the actual dual track agile model and where it comes from, because you can probably read that yourself in the internet. But I'm going to focus on the benefits and the challenges and how I've seen it applied in practice. And to wrap up, I'm going to see if I can break some myths about it. Before I start though, I wanted to kind of get to know you a little bit better. And I have a little poll here. So on your Zoom kind of menu, you'll be having this little reaction bar. So you can choose to put a thumbs up in case you have seen the dual track agile model in practice. So I just wanted to see how familiar the audience is. So let's see. No, we'll have one thumbs up. Okay, good. Maybe some people did not find it, or They're not. Okay, cool, great. So most people have not seen it applied in practice. Hopefully this will help. And for those that have seen it, maybe you can relate for some of those benefits and challenges that I've seen myself. So I'll be very interested to hear from you later. So as I said, I'm going to quickly go through the slides around, like, the history of this whole thing. So these are just names that you can check out yourself, but essentially this slide is to say that as a concept, this is not new. It dates back to 2005, and the first reference of something that resembles it comes from Lynn Miller. Over the years, different people have kind of built on that. Some people call it DualTrack Scrum, and some people talk about continuous discovery. So it's all along the same lines. And essentially, that's kind of like having two parallel tracks of discovery and development throughout the product and design and delivery process. And those continually feed back into each other to inform new hypotheses. So visually, I don't know why this is so blurry, but visually this looks something like this. This was done by a couple of my ex-colleagues actually, so I can't take credit of that. But so you have, as I said, the discovery bit. So you have things around observation, you have some discovery hypothesis, you run experiments on those. Importantly, those are low cost. You measure those, you have some sort of measurable signals predefined, you learn from that, and that could result in either going back in the same loop, or that feeds into your build or development track. And then that goes through the whole loop of build, measure, and learn as well. And then that could either inform future discovery hypothesis or just go into the same loop. So largely people say that the discovery bit answers the question what to build, essentially, build the right thing. And the development track would answer the question of how, so build it in the right way. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. And so in the next section, I'm going to tell you about the benefits and the challenges that I've seen. So I've seen it applied in a couple of organizations, and those were similar in a way. So one was a startup and one was a scale up. One was in fintech and the other one was in healthcare. And so the similarities between the two companies was in the fact that those were really fast growing companies. And they were operating in a very fast-paced environment and very competitive environment. They felt the pressures of constantly having to release new features, build new products, things that will give them a competitive advantage, win users over, essentially, acquire new or retain users that they have. But also, more importantly, they also had investment that they had to secure. And in order to secure that, they had to, get investors, and those would get attached to particular ideas. And so those companies really needed to find the what quite quickly and then build it and release it quite quickly. So in that regard, the first bit here is I've seen this DualTrack work well when there is a very vast product space that needs to be managed. So for example, you'd have a lot of options that you can go down with, and you need a systematic way to prove or disprove hypothesis. Or maybe you're building a new product that's maybe either new to the market, or there's a lot of competition there and you're building it from scratch, and people don't know much about it. So that's how I've seen it work quite well in those kind of circumstances. Another thing I've seen it help with was with team comms, user and stakeholder involvement. So it really encouraged gathering user feedback more frequently and continuously, and involving the stakeholders and the SMEs in that whole process of design and delivery. In terms of the team, what often happens is you have different roles within the team and they all kind of have their particular kind of area, and sometimes they get really siloed. So developers will focus on developing, QAs on testing, BAs on analysis and design on whatever. So that by having those two tracks running at the same time, that really helped people wear different hats at different times and get involved into areas that they would naturally be involved in. And another thing this helped with was stakeholder management. We had a lot of stakeholders, and they all had very different opinions or ideas, but none of those were backed up with actual science or data. And so by having this discovery track, in addition to our development track, we could kind of earlier on prove or disprove some of those hypotheses, and I guess have a more systematic way to check their assumptions, and involve stakeholders in the running of the experiments of those, so they could see their idea, how it progresses, what we've learned about it, and they can also see if we decide to build that, they can actually see the working software at the end. And all that obviously accelerated the delivery of the right thing. So basically investing your time and I guess money to build things that the users will actually benefit from and use, which ultimately would then lower the development cost. So those are the benefits that I've seen. Right. So more importantly, some of the challenges that I've seen, which would be very interesting for people, I hope. So there's, I've listed the main challenges that I've seen, and I'll tell you for some of them how we address them, which is not to say that's how you should address them if you decide to apply this in your teams, but it's just what worked for us. So the first challenge was around this sort of split between people involved in the discovery track and people involved into the development or the delivery track. I think I think it was Marty Kagan that like refers to this sort of phenomenon as it's a dual track, not a dual track. So essentially, it shouldn't be two different processes and two different teams kind of like almost competing and doing this. It's supposed to be one team owning the two tracks that go in parallel, and one team, and it should be part of one process. So that's the whole point. But in practice, it's really hard to achieve. And so what worked for us was having a sort of a bridging role between the two tracks. So someone, or either a few people, that will kind of keep track with both of those and make sure that there's like a good spread in between from the team, and that one doesn't, there's a balance in between the two. So usually those kind of like bridging roles will fall on, say, a BA or a product person, or maybe a designer or like a delivery manager type person. So in one of the teams, that was me, for example. Another challenge that we've seen is time boxing the discovery activities. It was really hard because, I mean, how do you decide when you've learned enough about something, right? Equally, discovering hypotheses and items that are quite too far in the future is also not, could be considered wasteful, because by the time you get there, it may not be applicable anymore. So it was really hard to narrow down of like, what's the specific time that we need to spend on discovery activities. And what we decided in one of the teams, and worked quite well, was we had an experiment of the week. So each week we'll run a different experiment for a specific hypothesis that we wanted to either prove or disprove. And then, we'll have it for the week. And then at the end of the week, we'll decide, whether we build that, kill it, or keep learning about it. And which leads me to the third challenge, making that call. People usually get very invested in the things that they spend their time on, and despite the fact it was not that big, not that like a lot of time they spent on it, they're very eager to either build it or keep learning about it, and they don't want to park or kill it in any way. And sometimes the value comes from the fact that some of the things that you discover you may not want to build, or maybe you shouldn't build right now. So you shouldn't really invest more time in that. So that making that call is very important. Prioritizing, as you know, probably is always hard, but for the discovery track, it was even harder, because it was really hard to predict what you would like to learn next, or what you would need to learn next. And we tried different things, we tried the whole mapping effort versus value. We tried some lightweight value canvases for each of the hypotheses to kind of compare the value of each of them. But then the thing that really worked in one of the organizations was that they had a very clear goals per quarter of what they wanted to achieve. They've used this whole like lean value tree method to define their goals and initiatives that are attached to them. And so essentially we prioritized our hypothesis in a way that they link to those initiatives that have been prioritized for the quarter. And that worked quite well for us in terms of like what we wanted to achieve next and aligned with the organizational goals. But obviously that works for an organization that is very transparent about its goals and initiatives and very clear in their communication. And, you know, sometimes that may not work not all organizations are like that. And then finally, as you know, there's always delivery pressure. And sometimes, you know, that means that the development track or the delivery I've referred to here takes higher priority because we just need to meet that deadline, right? And so discovery activities will take a back, you know, they will sit at the back and they're not going to be prioritized. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you do have to prioritize delivery, right? And be reaching a deadline. But what really helps there is making that conscious decision in the team and revisiting it frequently. And that bridging role I mentioned at the start also helped here because that was almost the role that kind of almost like policed when we've spent too much time on one track and no time on the other. So, you know, they tried to maintain some sort of balance between the two. So those were the main challenges that I've seen. And in terms of how to apply it in practice, I've literally taken what we've done in one of the teams. So this is how it worked for us. I'm not saying this could work for everyone. So again, just to recap, we took this visual and we had, okay, there's a discovery track and there's development and there's some items in each of those. There are some activities happening in each of those. So what we had was we had two boards essentially, right? So we had, back in the day, we had physical boards, but obviously now they would be digital. But we had a board for discovery items to track them and see how they progress. And we had a board for development or delivery. So, by the way, this can be applied for like irrespective of whatever you're doing, Scrum or Kanban or Scrumban or whatever. It's just don't get too hooked up on those kind of categories specifically. It's just the ones that worked for our team. So we, in the discovery bit, we had, again, as I mentioned, ideas, and those ideas will come from our stakeholders, our SMEs, the team itself. Maybe if we have something in production, some user feedback from that, we'll generate some ideas here. And those will get kind of, they will get themed, essentially grouped in themes, and then hypothesis will come out of it. And sometimes there will be a big hypothesis and then smaller ones connected to it. And then those will get prioritized for discovery. Again, this will be very linked to the goals and the initiatives that the company has set for that particular quarter or H1 or H2 of the year. And then we had things in progress. So we tried to pair up on those in the same way we tried to pair up on the development bits. And those will be a mix and match, different roles, you know, so developers are not always only involved in here, they can also be involved in discovery. And so we also watched how many items we have in progress at one time. So we make sure that we don't take on too much and nothing progresses. And then the other three are really about that call that I mentioned before, right? You have to make a call ready, if that is ready for delivery. So if you decide to build it, then it's going to feed into the backlog here and get prioritized and go through the whole process there. And if it's explored, but you want to learn more about it, then it goes back to ideas. Or if it's explored and parked, quite frankly, at first we called this category binned or killed, but that wasn't very stakeholder friendly. So we then changed it to explored and parked, which meant those are items we explored and we decided not worth doing them right now. So they're going to just be there. Maybe we'll revisit them in future, but they're not going to feed into our development. And having items in that category is okay. So then obviously development track, it just goes as per usual. And the way we achieved that, as I said, there weren't two different teams working on this. It was one team, and we just had two kind of different tracks that were running in parallel. And it was a shared team responsibility for both. So everyone got involved in everything. So we had team ceremonies for each. So we had a stand-up for discovery, stand-up for development. You know, we'll have prioritization session for discovery and one for development, and all different checkpoints throughout the week for those. We had measures of success.
Okay, I think we're interrupting a little. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, this Adriana is a bit stuck.
Yeah, I thought it was my Wi-Fi.
Yes, Adriana told us that that she had some Wi-Fi problems, and in the case she can't get back on the PC, I will start presenting the presentation she sent me beforehand, and she can join by phone. Let's see how that works out.
At least it makes the Berlin Wi-Fi not seem so bad, because before that, whenever we're on a call, it's me who has bad Wi-Fi. So it seems that London also has some connectivity issues sometimes.
I think we all have them, even in Romania, which is famous for its good internet.
Yeah, at some point it was the 6th fastest.
Right.
Hi, I'm so sorry. Are you able to hear me?
Okay, so you can share, right? No need for me to.
No, I can. I'm so sorry.
Great. No problem.
Not quite sure when I dropped off. Was I at this point somewhere?
Measure of success. You were talking about the measures of success.
Ah, cool. Okay. So nothing was missed. That was the last thing I said. All right, then. Yes. Thank you so much. I'll hopefully my router doesn't hate me anymore. So anyway, yes, measures of success. So we had measures of success for each of the tracks essentially, and we also had criteria to move items from one category to another. So in the same way, you'd probably have something in your development track that you have, from prioritize to analysis. And then you get all your acceptance criteria there, and then it gets to ready, and then it gets to in progress and all that. The same way we had this in the discovery bit, and those kind of principles will be defined by the team in our kind of ways of working sort of session. And then the definition of done was equally important for both of those. So again, in the development, you'd have that as, say in production could be your done, hopefully. That would be the aim. But in discovery, it will be really the point where you make that decision, whether you progress with this in development, or you need to explore more of it, or you bin it essentially, or park it. And then frequent playbacks, that was also very important. So we had sort of the same way you do a demo, we did kind of like a showcase, I guess each week, or the cadence can differ, but essentially we would include items from each of the tracks. So for example, if something has been done in development that we can demo as working software, we'll do that. But then we'll also say what was our experiment of the week, how we did it, who was involved, what we learned, and what is next in the discovery track as well. And those playbacks will be to the team and to our stakeholders as well. So that's how we kept them up to date. And so finally, breaking some myths. So a lot of people kind of may look at this and say, okay, yeah, great, like DualTrack is gonna solve all my problems. I mean, that will kind of depend on what your problems are. So is it that you don't engage with users that much in terms of like getting feedback and kind of investing in user research? Is it that you're working in a very new product space with a lot of competition, similar to those two organizations that I mentioned? I've seen this applied in, you know, is it a startup or a scale up? Do you need to grow really fast? Do you need to secure investment in order to keep going as an organization, which means you really, really need to decide the what first. So build something that is actually going to be beneficial or not. And based on that, you can assess your own context and your readiness of your teams and organization, whether this will be a good thing for you to apply. And you could figure it out as you go, but it's really good to think about some of the challenges that you could face and how you would address those, and also some of the measurements of success. So if you set up like, these are the things we want to achieve by applying this DualTrack Agile, and kind of having a checkpoint to see whether you've achieved it. So I'd probably suggest like a trial period maybe. And finally, one thing that I can't reiterate enough. So there is this kind of common myth out there that all work has to move from discovery to development. And that's not necessarily the case, as I said. You may have a hypothesis that you've, you know, experimented with, and, you know, that's proven to be something that's either not valuable or not viable or just not right for you right now. So it's okay to not build it. I mean, I guess the whole point is to find that out early, and that's what the discovery track gives you when it's in parallel with development. So in terms of the experiments themselves, I forgot to mention that, you know, those could be really, just to give you like a few examples, those could be anything from a survey to usability testing or street testing or some sort of focus group or interviews with stakeholders or observation, or, you know, it could be really anything. There's like different techniques depending on what your hypothesis is, how you're gonna test that essentially. Finally, I just want to run this again, and let me open my participants list. So I want to know how likely the audience is to use DualTrack Agile in their team or organization. So you can have a thumbs up if it is likely. So I have some thumbs up. So on your Zoom, you have the reactions menu. Yeah, okay, there's a few thumbs up. Yeah, some people have not decided yet. That's okay. You should think about the context of your organization before you do apply this anyway. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Adriana. And it was very, very insightful. And now we're open for questions. So everyone, you're welcome to ask questions either verbally or in writing in the chat in Zoom. Also, if you're joining from YouTube or Facebook, please post your comments there and we will gladly ask them to Adriana. We already have a question from Andreas Wagner. When would you recommend to use DualTrack Agile with time to do research in comparison to doing experiments with working software? The background of my question is working with developers who are influenced by lean thinking and argue that discovery is not needed because we can build something simple and see how that works.
Yeah, that is a great question, indeed. That, I guess it will depend on the maturity of your team and your organization in terms of, and I will say the blank statement agile, there you go. But a lot of organizations think they're like really agile. Rarely I've seen that, to be honest, with all the clients I've been on, which is not to say anything bad. It's just to kind of, like, everyone is on a different kind of journey, right? And they're at different point of their agile journey. So if you do believe your team is kind of quite lean already, and you have incorporated that discovery bit in maybe a smaller scale within your development, then I'd say, you know, just do what works for you. Maybe that works for you. I'd only caution, I'd agree with the developers essentially there, where, it's always good to build something and actually see how it goes and experiment with working software, unless that takes a long time. So I'm talking about low cost experiments here. I'm talking about a week. Are they going to build that for a week? So, if you want, it depends on like how often you want to run those experiments, to answer that question. So yeah, again, it depends on your context. I would definitely say try and evaluate the maturity of agileness in your team and see if this is something that you would like to apply or you have the need for. Hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you so much. We can go on to the second question from YouTube, Thomas John. So great presentation, thanks. How did you document your learnings in Discovery? Which tools did you use, if any? And how did you organize the information in there?
Yes, so we used the same tools that the organization uses for stuff, so that we could, be as transparent. So most of the organizations use some sort of Confluence, Jira related software, right? So most of our findings, in one of the teams had like a Confluence page. So each hypothesis will have there, and then there will be like links to that. And in the other organizations, we use Trello, because that was like widely used in the organizations. So in terms of the digital tools that we used, was Confluence, Jira, and Trello. So we'll have a board for discovery and one for development. It's just going to be very similar to the board you have for development. And then you have those links to, say, other like kind of places where you expand what you've learned. Sometimes we'll have images, sometimes we'll have different presentations, maybe slides, but it's all going to linked into that sort of card on digital, either the Trello or the Jira. And in the physical board, we used cards like this one. Oh, can't see from my background, but anyway, I'm showing a card. Here we go. So we would put the hypothesis name, and then maybe we'll have a sticky on who works on that right now on our physical board. And yes, it does take time to maintain both, but it's worth it.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Adriana. I will take also a question from Zoom. From Daniel, which roles should at least be covered by a team? And we also have a question from Mindaugas. Who are Discovery Track team members and what roles?
Yeah, those are very similar, I guess. So it's just going to be the whole team. So in the teams that I worked in, they were cross-functional. So you'd have, you have software developers, then you have QAs, UX designer, usually a BA. So I was the BA, for example. And there will be a product owner or product specialist, whatever the organization names product people. What else did we have? We had like a tech lead. Yeah, so it was a cross-functional team essentially. And it would be any role they would be involved in, either development or the discovery. It's the same way you get that on a usual team, right? So in analysis, you pull one of the developers maybe to pair with you when you're doing the technical analysis of a story. It's the same way you probably get a developer and a QA doing one of those discovery hypothesis, or maybe a designer and a developer, so you can mix and match. That's what I meant by saying, regardless of your role, particular role on the team, you could get involved in other activities, because it's the work of the team that needs to get done, right? And the product of the team needs to support. So you would wear different hats at different times. And that kind of helps for you to also, and your team members, to explore different areas. And that usually motivates people. I do have to say it comes at the cost of context switching sometimes. So you should watch out for that. For the context switching, it's quite expensive sometimes.
Daniel also has a follow-up question regarding the size of the teams in your projects.
Yeah, so how big was this? So one of the teams they were all around like 10 people. One was maybe 12, but the other one was like 9 or 10 people. And again, we'll spread across the 2 tracks kind of equally almost. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in teams less than 9, though. I have to tell you, I don't know how that works. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We also have a question which was partially answered too. What are the challenges while deploying this process?
The challenges. So I guess explaining it to stakeholders was one, but I think both times the thing that worked was that we decided that way of working essentially from the start. So from the moment the team was formed and they started working on this product, first to find out what they need to build, and then actually working on the product, and then find out what sort of other features or products could be built. So I guess for any new joiner to the team, that was already kind of like a setup way of working. And but to start with, we were very clear of why we wanted to do it and what were the benefits that we thought that we would see, namely, faster ways to kind of drill down on options of what to build in a market that we weren't that familiar with, or starting a product from scratch, and the pressures that the competitors had to always like come up with great new products to release in fintech and healthcare. It's just insane out there. It's so many startups and so many great ideas. And the thing that won stakeholders over, as you can imagine, was securing the investment. People invest in ideas that they think will be beneficial, and if you have explored those ideas and invested the time in and actually have some sort of science behind them, you have some experimentation you've done and some sort of data and learnings you've collected, and you've proven or disproven hypothesis, then they're more willing to invest. So that's how we convinced them, but convincing stakeholders was the hardest part.
Thank you. Further question from Thomas: which were your measures of success in discovery?
I guess kind of related to what I just said. So we did in one of the cases, well, actually in both cases, but one of them after my time actually, but we did secure some new investment for the main kind of idea and main product that we wanted to build. And that became a priority for that organization as well, for that particular quarter. So that was one of the measures that we put in place to start with. And the other one were around how frequent we ask users for feedback, or how frequent we talk to them. And with this experiment of the week, arguably you could do that every week, which sometimes gets forgotten about when you are just building software, because there's always some sort of like deadline you have to meet. And with this, you kind of continuously do keep tabs on your stakeholders and your users. So that was one of our measurements of success as well, our touch points with them, to name a few.
Great. I'm struggling to see what questions to ask first, because there's so many. Thank you everyone for being so engaged. So I'll take one from Zoom, and then I would also focus on 2 further questions from YouTube, because on Zoom, even if we stop streaming, we remain and we can talk a little while. We don't know if all people from YouTube will join. So one question from Zoom, from Simona. Simona, thanks you very much for the presentation. and asks, would it be possible to provide a practical example of a DualTrack cycle while looking at the schema that your team used?
When you say a DualTrack cycle,
yeah, I can explain because for me it's really helpful to have real examples to understand, and it's kind of abstract. So if I look at your schema, I try to imagine it's like, here comes a request, and here this is what I do. And so your schema, I think it was very helpful, and I'm just trying to make it real, you know? So the cycle is like when you complete everything, both tracks, so I can understand what happens in both tracks. I hope it's not too much to ask. It's just very interesting and new to me. So
let me see a real example. The thing is, you know, with some of that is kind of like client data. So I don't think I mean, if I have to like take an example, I have to like anonymize it essentially. So do you mean like an example of an item that we had, like a hypothesis, for example, that we had, that we tested?
Yeah.
Okay. So in one of the companies, we were building the fintech one, we were building a solution around kind of social banking. And it was the whole idea of kind of having groups of friends doing activities together and then sharing money essentially, and knowing, I guess, knowing how much you owe someone and how much someone else owes you. So it's kind of like a WhatsApp group with money and calculates that, if I have to like put it in a nutshell. And then one of the things we had to explore then was we had to see what the relationship people had with money. So around, owing money, what do they feel about owing money, what they feel about someone owing them money, maybe what they feel about loaning as well. And so we did some street testing on that topic. We also did some research. We were looking at what other solutions, say, companies have in terms of like loaning opportunities or solutions for people. But we really wanted to like go into the psychology of like, how do people handle their money? Like, do I care that you owe me 2 cents, for example, or do I not? And some people do, and some people don't. And what's the amount of money that people would care about owing or being owed? So that sort of thing that we discovered. We did like interviews with people. We did, again, street testing. So those are some of our experiments that we did to either prove or disprove different hypotheses we had about owing money and being owed money. So say a hypothesis would be, we believe that people don't care about owing 2 cents, for example. And then you prove or disprove that. So you could just kind of break it down into like a sentence that you either prove or disprove with actual data, which is why it's based on kind of this like scientific way. I don't know if that kind of...
Just that what follows after you prove or disprove.
Like, yeah, so then...
Or...
Yeah, so then you decide, okay, there's like enough people that care about this particular feature. So, maybe we introduce reminders that you owe money to someone, or, like a notification. Or if that is the solution that we choose to do, and then that goes into how, so the what, the problem that you address is people care about owing money or being owed money. And then the what, like, oh, maybe you have a reminder on my phone that I owe you money. And that will go every week or every day or whatever. And then you go into, and then that goes into the development, and then that gets like, prioritized and analyzed and in development, and then you demo it and then you release it. And then you get feedback from those. Maybe people get annoyed by too frequent notifications. I'm just saying assumptions here, but yeah, so that's essentially it. Or you may decide that not enough people care about this thing, and you're not going to build anything about it, and you're not going to prioritize that, because notifications in itself, it's kind of a lot of things that you need to do there to build that. It's kind of months worth of work. So really deciding, is it worth investing in it or not?
Thank you so much.
Great. We still have 2 questions from YouTube at this point. One from Michael. Thanks for the great presentation. How do you handle discovery for working on long-term roadmaps, given that most investors and managers still expect long-term outlooks?
Yeah. Interesting. When you say long term, I mean, I guess you can't really ask the person, but can you? When you say long term, do you mean like a year worth of work or 2 years? I mean, my argument there would be, maybe, it comes down to the agility of that, or like the maturity around Agile and kind of the understanding of, yeah, sure, you can have high level items on a roadmap. Let's be honest, it would be some sort of Gantt chart. And then you would you would like drill into the detail of those maybe a few months before, not like a year before, I guess, or maybe, yeah. So it's more around the understanding of like, yeah, you could still have that, those things would be on your discovery as items. It's just things that you haven't prioritized right now. So the discovery track will give you the outlook of a few months down the line, because the reality is the development track is the things that you've already, you have to build. You probably have some sort of deadline to build it. So you're doing it now, but then what's next after that is what the discovery bit gives you in parallel. So it could actually help you building those roadmaps, but they're not going to be very specific in terms of timings, just because, they can't. They shouldn't. So that's my answer.
Thank you. Thank you. We also have a YouTube compliment from Lemon Tea Lover. That was a great example of a use case of the cycle. Love the presentation and the talk. Okay, just wanted to... yeah, and also the last question at the moment from YouTube, from Andreas. How do you manage 2 agile boards? Do you have some recommendations on how to do this best? I guess you need some people who have their heads in both tracks, example, a PO, which adds a bit of complexity.
Yeah, it's true. Well, because it's a sufficient team and cross-functional, everyone should, be updating the boards, the item that they're working on, they should be updating that, right? So that was the kind of, I guess, social contract we had in the teams. If something has moved into development, in the development board, in progress, say, developers usually would, like, whoever is pairing on it, for example, or working on it, they will move it in, right? Similarly for the discovery bits. But yes, you do have the bridging role. So I was in one of those roles, and I was the business analyst. Usually, yes, it will be someone like the PO or the BA, or designer, usually that type of role, they would have to work on the things right now, but also think a little bit ahead anyway. So it kind of fits into their description to probably be the bridge between the 2 tracks. So they kind of need to keep a tap on okay, what's happening right now, and is everything going well? Are there any blockers or whatever you need to resolve? And look ahead, i.e. discovery, and what's coming up next. So we would have weekly meetings for the discovery track, and and then at stand up, because we had ceremonies around those tracks. If something wasn't updated every day, we'll have a development track and a discovery track stand up. So those things will just naturally get updated, if that makes sense. So that's how we handled it. So it was a shared responsibility, and those, we had team ceremonies and processes around those that will allow it to be updated. The sync between the physical and digital board was a little bit of an issue. I don't think it's an issue right now because you only have one, but yeah, maybe in future.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And also many thanks from Andreas. He posted to thank you. And I suggest we end the streaming part of our event and continue on Zoom with the networking session. So thank you very much, Adriana, for sharing these insights with us. And thank you so much for presenting in such a practical manner with concrete examples, which are hugely helpful for us. And thank you everyone from YouTube and Facebook for being together with us. And you're kindly invited to join us now on Zoom. My colleague Alexi will post the link. So please follow the link and join us to network and discuss more between friends. So see you everyone, and take care. We can stop the streaming.
Thank you. I will stop the streaming.